hoping you're liking the new format where we're giving a bit more time getting into some of the areas that rather than dashing and darting about. So Eileen, over to you.
Okay, now I promised Robert when we had our first conversation that I would not talk a lot, because when I first kind of spoke to him, I ended up speaking for half an hour just about how excited I was about the book. So, quick introduction to Robert. He's an eclectic career with a broad mix of skills. I always like people talk about the mix of maths and music, and that's probably Robert. Engineering, project management, and a whole load of drama thrown into that. So I don't know whether you want to say any more about kind of where your career's taken you, Robert, but I'm really interested. What drove you to write this new book that's kind of come out, that's kind of got it on the bookshelves? Because any book writing is a labor of love.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So hello, everyone from Chicago. The driver, the first event that happened in my life is that over the past decade, I started concluding that project success rates were not improving. Companies were making the same mistakes. And I felt there's got to be a way to move the needle on this. The second thing that happened was about 12 years ago, I started taking dance lessons. And as some of you might know, being a beginner guy in dance lessons stinks. So you have the incentive to take classes intensely and get out of beginner mode. And what I started concluding from these dance lessons, Latin, salsa, bachata, cha-cha, etc., is that everything I learned on the dance floor applied off the dance floor. When you think of lead, follow, elasticity, rotation, the learning never stops. And I also, at the same time, found myself in improvisation classes. So I live in Chicago. I consider it to be the home of improv. Call out to Viola Spolin, the matriarch of improv. If anyone is not familiar with Viola Spolin, I would encourage you to look her up. And that is the origin of improv. And again, everything I learned in improv applied to my teams. The next thing that drove me to write the book was that I had a couple people close to me pass away in 2017 and 2020, a brother of mine and a good friend. And that, in conjunction with the final driver, was a webinar that I had attended in 2018, led by two 30-something-year-old women who had just finished their first book. And their call to action in this webinar, the webinar itself was entitled, "Do you have a book in you?" Subtitled, "You can't take it with you." So when we think of our legacy and passing, sometimes we think of money and leaving money behind. And I think what these two ladies, these two brand new authors, were challenging their audience to do is get your talent, your wisdom on paper. You can't take it with you. The next generation needs it. So get to work on that book. And so that's now one of my favorite networking questions is, hey, so do you have a book in you? What if you were forced to write a book, what would it be about? So Eileen, those would be the drivers. It's the combination of the performing arts and project success rates not improving, the employee experience not improving, the applicability of the performing arts. And I just knew I had to get this stuff on paper so that others could build upon it. And in the spirit of improv, play yes and with it.
Excellent. And congratulations. As I say, kind of getting the book out is a huge achievement in itself. But there was a bit of me when I read the title, particularly kind of the subtext there, Transcending Agile with Ruthlessness and Grace. I suddenly thought, well, is this really going to be a new agile where the world is going to be taken over by innovation elegance? I love the kind of the juxtaposition of ruthlessness and grace, but is this going to be capital E in future projects now as opposed to capital A?
I love the question. So when I think of capital A, uppercase agile, lowercase agile, I think of the ambiguity that has oozed into the agile conversations. Right, there are certain objective, explicit, unmistakable, unambiguous aspects of Agile. And then there are some subtleties, I believe. Over the last 20 years, again, the Agile world has not been static. So where I land on elegance and what ambiguity might be there, capital E, lowercase e, I feel like it doesn't run the same risk because it's incredibly unambiguous about whether you use the frameworks, and you can point to stuff, you can print it out, or you can say, we're not doing this. We're not doing this framework that I think we're going to tiptoe into momentarily. And we're not putting this stuff on paper. We're not imitating a symphony. We're not imitating an improv team. We're not imitating a dance couple. So no, we're not elegant. We are VUCA. And my concern right now, the status quo of many innovation teams is that that acronym VUCA, that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I believe too many teams are surrendering to VUCA. And the phrase I have heard more than once is, well, it's just what we have. It's, we're in a VUCA world. And I refuse to accept and surrender to this resignation to VUCA, that we just don't need to do that, because the inspirations for amazing people-centric teamwork, we already know what those are. The conversations about the performing arts, these comments are already in our conversations, where someone may say, hey, are we singing from the same hymnal? Are we, well, let's wing it. We can improvise. And so what these books do is you give me an inch and the books take a mile, and let's really exhaust all the amazing, valuable, and fun culture traits of the performing arts.
So I've just Lindsay's just going to kind of put the various kind of elements on there. And one of the things that I kind of really like about the book, and as you know, I've been through it twice, read it through once and thought this is a different world, read through it again and thought, actually, there's some kind of really good kind of different elements that can be kind of picked up on. And as you say, it's not about kind of taking it all and kind of suddenly saying, oh, we're now kind of moving to this. But I think there's some really good elements in there that we can kind of pick up on and use within our organizations, are undoubtedly driven through example and through implementation by the PMO. So I know you've touched on it, just if you could just expand a little bit on this kind of people-centric methodology.
Yeah, so the graphic you're showing right now tries to distinguish, okay, the rational side of my brain says what good looks like is this, what bad looks like is this, and these are the labels that I can give that. And then the emotional side of my brain, the touchy-feely, sentimental side, what does good look like? What does bad look like? What are the labels I can give it? I think there's power in acknowledging this is what bad looks like, and we need to stop committing the same sins in our team. So the reason why I chose Ruthlessness and Grace in the subtitle is because it's the provocative, intense, extreme version of discipline and empathy. Discipline on steroids, ruthless. Empathy on steroids is giving grace. And so that's where I landed on the more politically correct terms, if you will, are discipline and empathy. And then for a book title, I needed something more provocative. And the words I landed on were ruthlessness and grace.
Excellent. Well, as I say, I love the phrase. So I know we haven't got a huge amount of time, but I just wanted to kind of dip into perhaps one particular element, one framework that you use within the book, which I think kind of resonates with everybody on the call, because we all use this on I suspect, a daily basis. This concept of RACI, that you're suggesting there's a better way.
Just like Agile, the RACI matrix has had a couple decades to improve project success rates, to improve the employee experience, and to solve VUCA. It's insufficient. It's not moving the needle. So when I rethink RACI and the ambiguity that it harbors and the lack of sustainability, the lack of teeth, I feel like we can't manage an infinite number of meetings. We cannot manage an infinite number of emails, right? That would be micromanaging. That's counterproductive. But that third communication channel, structured documentation, that stuff will still be valuable 6 to 12 months from now. So what if we only manage, so to allow project managers to avoid boiling the ocean, what if we only formally manage 5 verbs? It's formally managing only what's worth putting on paper. And the 5 verbs is enforced collaboration. You have names next to each verb. And I just felt that it is it's a way to instantiate a kind of expectation setting factory. I'll pause there, Eileen. Is that a fair?
No, that's fine. I just if we could kind of go on to the next slide, you can kind of just talk about this kind of govern with 5 verbs, which I think is a really interesting way, because often we kind of we have different words for different kind of stages of that documentation, and this makes it kind of quite clear in terms of the stages kind of things go through. And would I be right in thinking there's a kind of there is the opportunity to iterate through these stages as well?
Yeah. So I think the RACI almost got it right. Like there are 4-ish things, 4 different tiers, levels of contributing to work. And again, if you want your work to be durable, it's got to be on paper. So the 5 verbs, shepherds, what I consider to be an agreement factory. A healthy team is a kind of agreement factory. And for those where the word sign off is a little bit scary, well, then I'll hedge and call it an expectation setting factory. And so I feel like instead of a RACI matrix, consider in your project plan 5 verbs, inventory everything that's worth 5 verbs. Don't prohibit other work, but I would argue it's not worth formally managing because it's evidently not worth putting on paper. It's not worth collaborating or having an approval or distributing. So do that stuff at the pub. But anything that's durable, govern with 5 verbs, understand with clarity the dependencies, the duration estimate, the percent complete. If you want a seat at the table, pick a verb. And if that's, you can't stand the heat in the kitchen, step out of the kitchen, well then step back from the 5 verbs. I don't know what else that is, but so it's a ruthlessly disciplined way to shepherd collaboration without boiling the ocean.
Excellent. And I just I love it when there's some really kind of some new thinking that's not just been a kind of an evolving of what's there. This is a whole kind of new take. And I know you've, as you said earlier, you're being deliberately provocative to kind of drive the conversation. And so I would definitely kind of recommend people buy the book, read it. As I said, read it through once. And I think that's kind of as an interest. And as I read it through again with a kind of a different lens and think, well, actually, can I use this? And you're very much open to some feedback and challenge, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one person. I did my best with my network, my recent colleagues, my editor, to get folks' attention. Anyone who's in this audience, to get your attention, I was going to have to come out extremely formally and extremely forcefully so that together we can upgrade, play yes and keep moving the needle, solving. We need to solve VUCA, and I need others' help.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So if like me, you kind of really take a shining to Robert, you can see him actually, he's just about to jump off this webinar onto another webinar, and he's going to kind of do an APMG webinar on how to become a project manager, which might be useful for you to share with some of your team. I'm sure you all love being in PMO, but thank you very much, Robert. Really kind of insightful and a whole new different take on a people-centric delivery framework.
Thanks for having me, Eileen, Lindsay, and John. Yeah, very fun.